Peace, family. Let's talk about the identity crisis of Black America. Now, I want to begin with the end on this particular video. At the end of this video, I'm going to tell you that the most effective boycott is to support your own. So look for me to say that again at the end of the video. And we wanted to begin with the end. Now let's talk about this identity crisis and the idea of attention versus respect. As a people, we must understand that attention and respect are not the same thing. Not everything that gets you attention gains you respect. And not everything that gets you respect gains you attention. But if you ever find yourself in a position where you have to choose either or, choose to be respected. Now let's talk about the 400 plus year cultural assault of white supremacy on Black people. Let's talk about the identity crisis that is directly connected to our disconnection from our roots and our history. See, when you disconnect the people from their roots, then you can do to them whatever you wish, and they have no basis and no foundation to fight back. It reminds me of a conversation that I had about Black leadership and how a Black leader is like a piece of seaweed at the bottom of the ocean. Once it breaks away from the bottom and begins to rise to the top, it gets caught up in the current. And the current begins to take it further and further and further and further away from its roots. And at some point, it's taken so far off that it is never to return again. That is the position that we as a people are becoming into, or coming into culturally. See, remember what I said. The greatest boycott, the most effective boycott, is to support your own. Now let's talk about wiping the spit from our faces. And yeah, we're going to talk about Gucci. We're going to talk about Dolce and Gabbana, however you say it. Chanel. We're going to talk about Air Jordan. We're going to talk about all of that. And this Gucci blackface turtleneck, and how it was literally a spit in the face for Black people. Now, the only thing worse than being punched in the face is being slapped in the face. The only thing worse than being slapped in the face is being spit in the face. And the only thing worse than simply being spit in the face is for somebody to hawk before they spit in your face. And the only thing worse than that is having to wipe it off with your own hands. When Gucci made that blackface designer turtleneck, that was like hawking and spitting in the face of the original people, not just here in America, but all over the earth. How do we wipe the spit from our faces? But before we talk about that, we have to have a frank discussion about why it even matters to us in the first place. See, the only thing worse than the fact that they made the blackface turtleneck is the fact that many of us saw it as a cultural funeral for the Black community. Now, when I was growing up, I remember being in middle school, and I remember seeing the older children coming to school with sweatshirts on that had an L and a V on sweatshirt. And I remember asking somebody, what does that mean? And they were like, you don't know what that means? That means Louis Vuitton. Of course, we didn't know how to pronounce it back then. And at some point, even though these were knockoff sweatshirts, at some point it became established that if you wore Louis Vuitton, if you wore a Gucci sweatshirt, if you were a child who could afford one of these designer name brands and walked around like a billboard promoting their brand, that made you better than the children who could not afford the brand. So it created a sort of classism among black children, even though we all poor. What we were subconsciously taught is that if you were to wear one of these designer name brands, that it would blind people to how poor your family really is. So we bought into that. We didn't know any better, but at some point it became a part of our everyday life, a part of the culture. So if you had got a little money in your pocket and you were, a young black female, you went and bought you a purse, and you walked around with the $1,000 purse with no money on the inside, because the $1,000 purse in some way, form, or fashion made you feel like you were more valuable than you were without the purse. That's the point that I want to make. Before we can address our addiction to these name brands, we have to address the psychosis associated with why it is we think that wearing their names on our bodies adds value to who we are. And until we address that, then we will forever be enslaved to these fashion houses who do absolutely nothing for black people and or the black community. It is absolutely sickening to see a young brother grow up in poverty, and he feels that he has to have a polo horse on his shirt in order to blind the rest of his people to how poor he really is. Only for him to come out of that situation. Let's say he becomes a rapper or a musician or an athlete. He goes and he does well for himself. He picks himself up by his own bootstraps. He uses his gifts and his talent to rise above the poverty level. Now he got some money only to go and buy more of the same thing. So at first it was about, not feeling poor when you poor. But now you got some money. You're a little rapper. You sold a million records, and you're still going to buy this because your feeling of poverty has nothing to do, or it had nothing to do with how you grew up. It has everything to do with the dignity deficit that we as a people are in, because we have been disconnected from our roots and we have been stripped of our identity. So when somebody strips you of your identity, then you're constantly out here looking for one. So you attach yourself to gangs and say, I'm a Blood, I'm a Crip. Why? You do that to fill the identity void. You will go out and murder somebody over a pair of sneakers? Identity crisis. So brothers and sisters, the way for us to address this issue is we have to replace the cultural assault of white supremacy on us with an aggressive push to teach our brothers and sisters who it is that they really are. And when you know that it is your people who built the pyramids, it is your people who built civilizations that were so far advanced that we had to bury them underneath the desert and underneath the sea, so that when this new man, the white man who came onto the earth, so that he can't use our own wisdom against us. When you know who you really are and who and where you come from, brothers and sisters, you don't need to be a billboard for some white fashion designer in Paris who can give a damn about you. You become a billboard for yourself, a billboard for your own people, a billboard for that which we own. So we must make the cultural shift from our addiction to these name brands. And we must create a new paradigm that says, the days of thinking that wearing Gucci represents my success, that's over. That's over. But when you take that same money that you would have spent at that Gucci store and you go and you purchase from a black owned lifestyle brand, when you wear that and you become a billboard for that, that represents true success. See, wearing a Gucci sweatshirt might represent your success to you, but when you buy from your own and you promote your own the way we've promoted them for decades, then that represents our success. It's not about your success anymore. It's about our success as a people. And when we begin to think like that, then Gucci will respect you. Mr. Louis Vuitton, that's the only way to gain the respect of the civilized world, is to buy from your own and to promote your own. So let's make this cultural shift, brothers and sisters. Buying black can no longer be just a hashtag or a trend. Buying black must become a way of life. It's time out for simple boycotts. See, the problem with a boycott is that a boycott has a beginning and a boycott has an ending. So when one of these name brands comes out and they blatantly and outright disrespects our community, when they hear us say that we're going to boycott them, that doesn't mean anything to them. All they have to do is find a way to appease us and we'll be right back at the Gucci store. No, it's time for permanent boycotts. And at the end of the day, the only thing that will gain us the respect of the rest of the world is for us to support our own unapologetically and eternally. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video. The most effective boycott is to support your own. Peace.